Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Start the Week with Spencer. This is our weekly webinar here at Doman International, where we have parents join from around the world and ask questions about children with special needs, parenting, early childhood development, and education. And as far as we know, this is the only webinar in the world where we take questions from parents, often their hardest unanswered questions, and also we aim here to give hope and help to parents of children with special needs around the world. So today we are having a session which is an open question and answer session, which is really for parents to ask any questions that they have. And just to let you know, we're basically going to have 4 kinds of episodes of Start the Week with Spencer moving forward. The first is an open Q&A like this one. We're going to have parent interview sessions where I'm going to bring parents on with me and I'll interview them about their experience doing the Doman Method and what they've learned across their journey with parenting. I'm going to have staff question and answer sessions where I'm going to bring in other staff. I'll ask them questions on a topic that they're an expert about, but I'll also let parents ask those staff questions as well. And then we're also going to have another session, which I'll do once a month, called Victory Day, where we will announce the major changes that children with special needs have had on our program during this time. So anyway, we are really excited. Moving into 2025, this is our first Start the Week with Spencer of this year. The plan for this year is that we will do an episode every Monday at this time. So we're going to do our best to not take a single week off. I may not be here every week. I might have certain guest hosts come in from Doman International and take over for me, but that'll only give all of you more of an opportunity to pick the brains of different subject matter experts at Doman International. Some of them are experts in mobility development, cognitive development, speech development, nutrition, so many different areas that they can talk about where they're more knowledgeable than me. So really looking forward to being able to connect all of you with more experts here at DI. All right, I see that I've got Colleen Hudson here. Colleen is our Director of Representatives. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Spencer.
Hi, thanks for joining me.
You bet.
Okay, so we are, I have here today Marion, has some questions, I believe.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
You're courageous. So, Marion, I was just wondering, could you maybe start off, maybe before you jump into your first question, just telling us a little bit about your child and then what brings you to today's show?
Hi. Okay. My child is 5 years old. He was born with esophageal atresia. He had to have surgery. It didn't go really well, so he had 12 surgeries within the first 4 months of his life.
Wow.
Then it showed that he had hypotonia. He wouldn't turn, on schedule, couldn't hold a head. He was delayed. At 2 years old, he developed speech, German, English, and Portuguese, where we were living. He was imitating, he was stacking blocks, doing these things just delayed. And then after a few months, he regressed. So these skills went away, the speech went away. He started to playing in a more autistic way, extremely sensory oriented, extremely auditory oriented. He, I think he has very, very, advanced perception when it comes to auditory things. And
Marion, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That regression you said it happened at 2?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this summer he was diagnosed with a genetic mutation, de novo mutation called CTNNB1 syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare, and it's a spontaneous mutation of that gene, which is supposed to, I guess, decode. They call it beta carotene or something. I don't really know.
Mm-hmm. We do have children currently on the program with that diagnosis.
I think it's the only known case with the esophageal problem in addition to that. Um, and so he doesn't walk yet. He's very on the tippy toes always, which is one of my first questions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Mm,
Okay. And so talking, yeah, I'll start by answering your question about why he might walk on his tiptoes, and then I'll probably ask you a few questions. So
sure.
yeah, there are usually two main reasons why children will walk on their toes. Okay. The first is the more simple, maybe explanation, which is some children are hypersensitive to touch on the bottom of their feet. So they're overly sensitive on the bottoms of their feet, and this leads them to get up, on their toes. For whatever reason, tactile hypersensitivity is the two most common areas of the body to see it are on the top of the head, on the scalp, and on the
Uh-huh.
feet.
Mhm.
And so that's one possible explanation. Uh, have you seen any signs of tactile oversensitivity?
He really doesn't tolerate much on the head. It's interesting. I didn't
Mm,
know.
yeah.
Um,
Like he doesn't like hats or
yeah,
sunglasses or that kind of.
exactly. He would not tolerate his glasses. He's supposed to wear glasses. He does not. No chance. Also, like the brushing of the teeth is difficult, and yeah, like brushing the head, or like when we have medical examinations of the ears or anything on the head, he will
Okay, he gets
refuse
very.
strongly.
Got it.
But the
Any
feet,
evidence of hypersensitivity on the feet, or you haven't seen
I mean,
anything?
he lets me massage his feet. He enjoys it.
Okay.
Um, I,
So that's one possibility. The second possibility is a immature Babinski reflex. So, on the bottoms of our feet, we have a reflex which is present called the Babinski. Okay. And in fact, this is actually checked very often in neurologists'
yeah.
offices because it's a very quick way to evaluate if a brain injury has occurred. Now, interestingly, you know, a lot of doctors know to check the Babinski. I don't think they quite understand why it's so important, but they do check it. The thing is, when we are babies, okay, we have this Babinski reflex where basically you stimulate the reflex by brushing the bottom of the feet. And with an infant, what you'll see is the toes will pop up on the foot and will fan out. And that's called the Babinski reflex. Now, for most people, if we're developing normally at 1 year of age, okay, when we start walking, we outgrow the need for the Babinski, and we instead of our toes going up, they start to curl down. Okay, and that makes sense. When you're walking, there's absolutely no need for your toes to be popping up. In fact, that would be bad for
Right.
our balance. And so sometimes children that are toe walkers, they still have this immature Babinski reflex, and that's leading to the toe walking. And what we usually have to do in these cases, Marion, is we have to do certain different kinds of programs and treatments to enhance brain development and organization. And then what happens is that overactive Babinski starts to disappear.
Okay. And
Um,
what do you, so he has braces, orthopedic braces.
hmm.
With those braces and like a walker, or even now just holding one of my hands, he can walk. His gait is obviously not normal,
So he
but
doesn't walk independently.
not independently.
Got
No.
it. Got it.
He
Okay.
doesn't stand independently either.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay.
With the braces, he can walk just like even just holding like one finger now, because we
Yeah.
practice it. Do you recommend doing that? Practicing walking like that?
So sorry, I'm going to ask you one question, and then I'll answer that. This is a very good question. Does he do any? Is there any mode of transport that he has to get around? Like, does he crawl on his
Mhm.
belly or creep on his hands and knees?
He does the bunny hopping crawling style,
Uh-huh.
and he can even alternate crawl, but he will prefer the other one.
Yeah.
And
When you say alternate
he
crawl,
can,
you mean on the hands and knees? Is that
yes,
right? Yeah. Okay.
yeah. And do you know the bunny hop? We call it bunny
Yes, we
hopping.
call it
Yeah.
bunny hopping too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he can get anywhere, and he has a very good sense of like danger orientation. I don't have to worry, like he will stop, in front of something before he falls or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So the bunny hopping is, as you probably know, because you mentioned that he can creep on his hands and knees and alternate, but also he bunny hops. So bunny hopping is not a normal form of movement, right? Because what should happen is we should creep in what's called a cross pattern, where we move our right arm forward with our left leg, and then vice versa, our left arm with our right leg. That's very important because it allows the two sides of the brain, the two different hemispheres of the brain, to work together and coordinate together. And this is important for a lot of different areas of development, but it's very important, for example, for balance development, which is going to be very important for your son moving forward with learning how to walk.
Yes.
Okay. So what we would generally do as part of the mobility program, right, to help him with advancing in his mobility, is we would do different activities to help teach the brain to move in a cross pattern, right? Because right now it sounds like he's bunny hopping a bit more than creeping in the cross pattern, and that's going to be very important. One of the oldest programs that's been used in the Doman method is called patterning. And it's a specific activity that we do, a kind of exercise that we do with children to teach the two hemispheres of the brain to work well together and to move in this cross pattern. And then once we get a child creeping, it's very important to have him creep a lot during the day. So now I'm coming back to your original question: is it good to hold his hand while he walks? It's not a bad thing to do it occasionally during the day. But we would always promote creeping over walking with support, if that makes sense. Okay, because the thing is, if you think about it, if he's walking with support, sure, there's some information his brain is gathering from that experience. He's feeling a bit of what it feels like to walk, but also he's learning what it feels like to walk with dependency, right? And in other words, his brain isn't fully learning how to balance on its own. It's learning to sometimes it might be even your brain kind of balancing for him, right? Since you're giving him support. So yeah, we would do patterning. I'm not sure if you've ever heard about it before. We would do creeping in a cross pattern, and if needed, last but not least, we have a mobility program called Glenn's Ladder, which is, think of a horizontal ladder, okay, that allows the child. Have you heard of this before?
Brachiation or whatever. Brachiation.
Yeah. So
I read about it in the book.
Yeah. So the brachiation ladder, which when we talk about brachiation, we're talking about a child going across that horizontal ladder with their feet off the ground.
Yes.
But when we talk about Glenn's ladder for your son, we're talking about he's holding the ladder, but his feet are firmly on the ground. And so what happens is children begin to learn by walking across, under the ladder. Their brain essentially learns how to walk on their own. Okay. And the great thing about walking under the ladder is it promotes cross pattern movement. So the child grasps the next rung with their right hand and they take a step forward with their left leg. And then they grab with their left arm and they step with their right leg. So, I think that a combination of these different programs would be helpful for him.
I mean, I wonder if he would be motivated to do that, or just like, oh, this is hard. Like he won't do it if he doesn't see a point, or it's hard.
Yeah, for sure. And so, one of the most important things, and this is really a fact of life of working with children regardless, is first of all, finding motivations like rewards that they will like, right? Because there might be many children who may not do an activity if they don't understand why, but they know if there's a fun reward at the end of it, like hearing their favorite song or watching a video, or, so for some children, it's as simple as knowing they're going to get a hug from mom, or, every child is different and is motivated for different reasons. There's the motivational part of things is very important. And that's why a lot of our work involves teaching parents how to motivate kids.
Okay.
But the second part of it is that usually when we start these things, we do it with support first, so it's not like just throwing the kid under the ladder and saying, hey, kid,
No.
do this on your own.
Right.
Usually when we start out, we actually begin by moving the child's arms and legs so they understand what we're expecting of them. And then after some time, they get used to it. And many children actually, they start to realize, oh, okay, for the first time, I'm kind of walking on my own here. And yeah. And it also, Marian, one final thing about the ladder, it helps straighten the child's body. And this is very important because, like you said, some children tiptoe walk. Or some children, they might walk with bent knees. And so when you've got the ladder set at a high position, so the child is holding the ladder, it actually maintains a straight posture. And it also often promotes the child putting down their heel as well. So yeah, it helps create a correct form of walking.
Cool. Thank you.
Out of interest, Marian, how did you hear about the Doman method?
I don't remember. I think maybe there's a reference in the book on the GAPS diet. Could that be? Like I was reading about the GAPS diet.
Okay. It's possible.
There might have been a reference or some book I read about special needs and stuff because I've, read a lot to find help. Somewhere was a reference and I was like, oh, what's that? And then I was intrigued and I started reading these books, especially with the reading. I was totally intrigued and I started doing that.
And so which Doman books have you read?
How to Teach Your Baby How to Read. Then I'm starting to do the math one. The general one, like there's a more main one, I think.
Probably you're thinking about general knowledge, the encyclopedic knowledge book?
No. Just about the Doman Method.
Oh, the Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness?
That, yeah. Then also the autism one.
Yeah, great. Yeah, because I was going to say, I do recommend this book for you.
I read that one first, I think.
Okay, good. Yeah, and there's a book out there. A lot of people aren't aware of it, but it's incredibly informational. There's a book by my father, Douglas, called From Immobility to Walking, which is about the different physical programs that you can use to bring a child from being unable to move to walking. I highly recommend that book.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Where do you live?
In Switzerland.
Oh, in Switzerland. Okay, got it. Yeah. Yeah, actually we've I don't know if you know this, but we have a institute, a location actually in Italy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're actually going there in a couple of weeks. We'll be there the weeks of the 20th and the 27th.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, and Marian, one other thing I want to say, we do have other children on the program with this specific, genetic diagnosis. And actually, one of the kids, the mom is very, she posts a lot on social media about doing the program with her daughter. Now, like you said, I don't recall, with seeing a child with this diagnosis with the esophageal aphasia that you mentioned. Yeah.
Also, also with the autistic, he doesn't have an autism diagnosis, but there's very lack of staff in Switzerland, special needs staff. So that's part of the reason why.
Marian, honestly, it's the same everywhere.
Really?
I have to be honest with you. Yeah. Every family that we speak to, they say the same thing. They go, oh, in my country, it's not as good. Right.
It is really, you wouldn't think that Switzerland is, it's a developed country, but huge lack of speech therapists, all kinds of things. But I've connected with a lot of other moms with this syndrome, and I don't really see, I'm asking questions about the regression, and they seem to have different experiences. I don't know.
Absolutely.
There's a huge range of symptoms or of how it shows.
Yeah, and the reason for that is that even children with the same genetic condition can have very different symptoms. And the reason for that is the genetic condition creates a neurodevelopmental problem, right? The brain doesn't develop normally because of the genetic condition. But many children have additional injuries that occur in the brain.
Right.
Sometimes it's during birth. Maybe they have a traumatic birth. For
Right.
some children, it's afterwards. Maybe they have some kind of a negative reaction to a medication, or,
Right.
there are many reasons, unfortunately, that a child who's already physiologically sensitive and vulnerable, that their brain can be affected. So I always give this example because it's maybe the one that can be best understood. If we take the genetic diagnosis that we see the most, Down syndrome, we see some children with Down syndrome who can walk, talk, run. And then we see some children who cannot walk, cannot talk, have terrible seizures. And that's because their brains simply were more injured at some point in the process than the other children. And that's why we really focus on brain development itself, because when we start to help the brain develop faster, those symptoms start to go away. So I really feel strongly a lot of these, even the esophageal issues, like, just to give you an idea, years ago, children used to come to us diagnosed as having I'm not joking, a lazy esophagus. So, that was like the typical diagnosis of the time. Your child has a lazy esophagus. But the real issue is that, the brain connectivity with the esophagus is not normal, right? So once you start to improve brain development, these symptoms start to go away and you start to see better function overall.
Right. And so I wonder if, like, the speech he developed and then he stopped, and it was other things like blowing and like things with the mouth, making things as if I don't know, I think it's called apraxia or something,
Yeah, speech apraxia.
something like that happens where, like, he can no longer, give the orders basically to the tongue or whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
Or I don't know, but, like, do you have any theory on the regressions?
Well, it's funny. I was going to ask you if you had noticed anything. Do you have any suspicions about what might have caused the regression?
Absolutely not. Like, I mean, I have run this through my mind
Sure.
100 times, and
Sure.
I
Yeah,
cannot.
and sometimes because we do see a good number of children who have suffered regressions. Sometimes it's a clear thing where parents say this event occurred and we saw a clear
No.
regression, and sometimes parents don't. But I do have to say, almost regardless of whatever caused the regression, we still have to kind of confront the situation as it is today,
Right.
and focus on healing the brain as it is today.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's very. But I'm sorry to hear that he had that.
It's all right.
To answer your question about the speech, so speech problems are probably the most common symptom of brain injury that we see. Okay. And the reason why is there are somewhere between 8 and 12 different areas of the brain that work together to produce speech. Okay. So if even one of those 8 areas is injured, that's going to impact a person's ability to talk.
Right.
And so just to give you an example, there's a cranial nerve that comes out of the brain called cranial nerve 7, and it controls our facial muscles. It helps us move our tongue. And so if that nerve isn't working properly because of a brain injury, it can affect our ability to control our mouth, say what we want to say, for the point that you're saying. So what we often do with children like your son is we do a combination of different sensory programs, like, programs to improve oral awareness and his ability to feel and move his mouth, along with certain cognitive programs to help stimulate speech, right? Because we found that when we can improve You know this from reading the book How to Teach Your Baby to Read.
Right.
Very often, for example, when we implement that reading program, we start to see a child speak more.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I can see changes.
Oh, really? So you've started the
Yes.
reading program already?
Yes.
That's great. How long
I
have you
love
been
it.
doing it for?
Maybe a month, but I can't do as much as I do it maybe twice a day, and his attention span is long. So I can do more words than you would suggest, but it's not often that he's ready for it.
Yeah.
So I do my version of it, but I can see it's amazing. And I started teaching him letters because he seems to be very interested in the letters.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, okay, today we're going to do words with T, and like I emphasized that. And then the next morning, he woke up going t t t t.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God,
Yeah. And one of the and we talk about this in the Doman Method book. The reading is the visual input of language, right? So most of us hear language through our auditory pathway, or we hear language spoken to us, but reading is the visual form of language.
Yeah.
And many children like your son are better visual learners than auditory learners.
Yeah.
So sometimes when they start to see words shown in a visual form, their brain just seems to comprehend it better. And sometimes that results in speaking the words.
Amazing. So I had a hard time finding a speech therapist. It was impossible. And I was kind of like desperate. Well, should I need, teach him PECs or with a device, or what do I do? And then I discovered this reading program. So it's like, okay, this I can do. I can just start with this. Now I'm almost glad I didn't do anything else. Or my question would be like, what do you suggest? Like, just keep with this, or would you introduce picture system or like devices, or what do you call it? Supported communication methods?
Yeah. So the truth is, and this is after, we've been seeing children with special needs now for 70 years. Obviously, I haven't been. I've been doing this 17 years, but we've had, generations of staff who have seen families. And I have to say that it is incredibly rare that we speak to a family where the child has significant results from speech therapy. It's very rare. It does occasionally happen, but it's,
the same with physiotherapy. I stopped it because
yeah. I mean, I think I'm being conservative in my estimate here, or maybe I'm being too generous, but I'd probably say 5% at most.
Wow.
At most, and that might be generous. So yeah, it's an incredibly small number of children, and usually those children, by the way, who do have success with speech therapy, in my experience, they tend to be children who already speak. They tend to be very cooperative, right? So they're willing to work for an hour with a speech therapist, and they tend to be self-motivated.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find, children with special needs who already speak, are self-motivated and very cooperative, and I should add to that, who have a long attention span, so,
Yeah.
And even I would say children with all of those qualities may still not have a good result with speech therapy. But anyway, I'm not saying this to badmouth speech therapy, but rather what I'm saying is, I think if you started to implement some of the activities in the chapter, so I'm looking at the Doman Method book, and there's a chapter on chapter 10, enhancing communication and speech development. I recommend you implement the activities in chapter 10. There are speech activities like songs and poems, but also you mentioned PECs, which is like communication through pictures. In that chapter, we talk about something called the choice board, which is a communication board.
Right. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend, implementing those things with him.
Okay. Yeah. I tried a little bit, but I have to try again. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I do have to say certain activities require persistence.
Yeah.
Like, because sometimes children, when something new is presented to them, they're kind of like, what is this? Why are we doing this? And they'll also test out parents' boundaries a little bit. Is mom really serious about this? So they might give a little bit of resistance. But then after you try it a few times, they go, okay, I guess mom's serious about this. So let's do it. Sometimes children do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Colleen, do you have any questions for Marion?
I don't think so. Marion and I got to speak previously. Yeah, so we've been in touch, which is good. And so obviously, if as you're going along, Marion, any questions you have, you can always come and join this session.
Okay, cool. This is amazing. Thank you so much. I probably can't do Italy this month, but I want to come, either in the US or somewhere.
Well, listen, you're always welcome. And stay in touch. Stay in touch. Cool. It sounds like you've gotten off to a great start with your son.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Thanks to you guys, to the books. Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Okay.
All right. Bye, Marion. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. All right, everyone. Well, we have some time to go to questions. So, whether you're joining me right now, you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, you can go ahead and type your questions into the comments box and we will answer them in order. If everyone, if you've joined this session a little later, I started off the session by saying that, first of all, we're going to do our very best to do this webinar every week. And we're going to have episodes where we do different things. We're going to bring on parents and interview parents who have been on the Doman Method for some time and get their advice for other parents. I'm going to bring on staff from Doman International and get their feedback, and get them answering questions on topics that they are experts in. We're going to be talking about the changes that children with special needs have on our programs. Every month, we're going to have a session called Victory Day where we talk about those changes and show videos and photos of kids. So really, really exciting stuff that we have coming up this year. Anything, Colleen, Colleen, maybe just because we mentioned Italy, we talked about Philadelphia, would you mind just talking for a second while we're waiting for questions about the locations of Doman International and where parents can come for appointments?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just got a question here. Sorry. Also asking about the schedule of appointments in Philadelphia.
So excellent. All right. That works. So for Philadelphia, right now we are scheduling for February and going forward from there. So we do have availability. I don't know about February 3rd, actually. I think that week might be full now. Never quote me because things do change. You can always reach out directly to me if you are interested in an appointment in Philadelphia because we want to have families confirmed as soon as possible, even if there are several months in between now and your visit, because appointments do fill up, and we don't want you to miss out on a week that would be a good one for you. So definitely reach out to me directly. But we see families at our offices outside Philadelphia most of the year. There actually are not that many weeks that we're not seeing families. And usually if we're not, it's because most of our staff are in other places seeing families. So Italy, of course, in January, April, July, and October. We also see families in Serbia. We actually have, and this is still kind of new, so it's exciting. We're doing live evaluations in Miami in February. So Rosalind and Douglas Doman will be evaluating kids there. So you get a live eval, you meet with them, and then you go home and we do your programming. The staff will design your child's program and you'll have that coaching online. So if you live anywhere near Miami, or if it's an easy flight for you, that's a good option. We also see families in California in June and in December. Oh, and we're also seeing families in New Zealand, although I don't know if any Kiwis are up right now watching this webinar.
Yeah. So by the way, I did look it up, and the next appointment in Philadelphia would be February 10th.
Thank you. I thought so.
The 3rd is filled. Yeah.
Okay. Terrific.
Perfect. And then Colleen, if people want more information.
Yes, please call me at 814-232-8668, or you can email me. It's info, I-N-F-O, at domaninternational.org. Those are both my direct contact. So I will be the one that sees your email or your phone call.
Yeah, and there's the email address there for Colleen. And Sandra, who asked about the appointments in Philadelphia, just reach out to Colleen and she can give you, if you give her like a span of time, we'd like to come in this month, then she can give you the available dates in that month. All right, great. Well, we have a question here on Instagram. What can we do for a baby with epilepsy and global developmental delay? Okay, good question. This question is coming from Aratira. Hopefully I'm saying your name correctly, Aratira. So the answer is a lot. There's a lot we can do for both global developmental delay and epilepsy. Let me start with the global developmental delay. So because the Doman method is a brain-focused approach, it is very common for us to see children who have developmental delay. Almost every child we see has some kind of developmental delay, but global developmental delay, meaning they're delayed in most areas of function, is incredibly common. And I believe on our books, we use the term neurodevelopmental delay to make it clear. And so absolutely, we can do a whole lot of good. And just to give you an idea of what the program includes, and we cover this also in our books. So for example, if you find our book, The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness, you can get it on Amazon. We cover so many different areas of development. And I'll just take 1 second and kind of read what we cover. So we talk about, of course, neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change. We talk about nutrition and how that impacts brain development. We talk about cognitive development, right? That includes things like, how to help a child speak, help them comprehend better, help them learn to read. We have a section of the book on mobility development, both for walkers and non-walkers. We have a whole section on sensory integration, which would include vision, hearing, and tactility. And then there are other chapters as well that I won't get into. But if you get the Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness, you'll see it's really, really comprehensive. And as I think most parents might intuit, if you have a child that has a global developmental delay, you're going to need a holistic approach, right? Because we're not just talking about one symptom, speaking problems or mobility issues or comprehension issues. We're talking about a global issue. And so for that reason, the Doman Method is holistic. And we really try our best to treat the whole child. Now, when we talk about epilepsy, about 40% of the children that we see have been diagnosed with seizures or epilepsy. It's very common. And what we do is we have a series of different programs that help prevent, and in some cases, even eliminate the epilepsy. We can, in some cases, completely stop the seizures and or prevent them. The way we do that is through, first of all, increasing oxygenation to the brain. Many people, it's incredibly rare that people talk about why seizures occur or what happens when a seizure occurs. When a person has a seizure, and this has been shown with brain imaging, as soon as the seizure ends, a rush of blood goes to the area of the brain where the seizure occurred, and it carries with it oxygen and glucose, right? Oxygen and glucose are two foods of the brain. And to understand how important oxygen is, right? If we can go weeks without eating or drinking, but we can only survive 4 minutes without oxygen. Our brain absolutely needs oxygen. By the way, 25% of the oxygen supply that we breathe in goes to the brain. Because the brain, the body will always prioritize the brain. It's the most important organ we have. So 25% of our oxygen immediately goes to the brain, and the rest of the body has to deal with the rest. And that's because the brain is so obviously so important for our functioning. So we have different Doman Method programs that increase oxygenation to the brain. When we do that, very often we start to see a reduction in the seizures. And sometimes we're able to prevent seizures entirely because the seizure is occurring to get more oxygen to the brain. So the first thing that we do is oxygenation. The second thing is nutrition. We make dietary changes with the children that very often can help reduce seizures, right? We tell parents what are foods to avoid. We tell them, what is the best balance of foods and the amount of water children should drink, what are the best liquids to drink, because those things can all impact seizures. And then last but not least, we talk about physical development and different mobility exercises which help oxygenation and can reduce seizures. So again, like I told you, it's a holistic approach, but when we kind of attack, I shouldn't use the word attack because it sounds so bad, when we approach the brain with different ways of helping it develop, often we can prevent the seizures. I hope that helps Aratira. And Aratira, if you want to learn more, I recommend just shoot us a message on Instagram. Colleen will get back to you through our Instagram page and can answer any questions you have. Any other thoughts you'd like to add to that, Colleen?
No, you said exactly right. Make sure to send a direct message because I think the questions disappear at the end of the session. Yeah. So sometimes families, parents will write a question in, we'll have a nice exchange with them. And then if they don't direct message us, we can't reach out to you. So please do, send us a DM and let us know where you are in the world as well, because we have representatives in many different countries, so we can get you the best answers.
All right, we've got a question here from Sandra. Any advice to improve writing and drawing? Okay, so let me start by talking about writing more specifically, because of course drawing is important and can help writing, but writing, that's really a major area of development we want to help children with. So when we look at writing, the first most important thing, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but it is critical, is teaching the child to read. It's funny, very often when children are kind of sent to kindergarten or first grade for the first time, the teacher will maybe start with teaching them letters and teach them writing skills. But the thing is, until the child has some reading ability, what's the purpose of writing? If they don't understand why reading is important, then why would they want to write, right? Reading is the input of language, writing is the output. And so we find that, first of all, when we teach children to read, it improves their writing. The second thing that we would do to teach a child to write is we really want to make sure the child has the manual ability to hold a pen or a pencil, right? And so to hold a pen or a pencil, you need what's called the pincer grasp or cortical opposition to hold that, right? And this ability of humans to oppose our thumb and our forefinger is one of the things that differentiates humans from other animals. And it's what allows us to have great fine motor skills and also write. So we have a program, Sandra, called brachiation, where we talked with Marion earlier about Glenn's ladder and how that can help children learn to walk. But with children who can walk and they're ready to learn how to write, we do something called brachiation, which is essentially monkey bars, where the child goes across this ladder with their feet off the ground. But the great thing is each time they grasp that next rung, right, it's improving this ability to hold the pen. And so that is really about helping manual development. Now, last but not least, we do have a writing program. And, it's the way we teach writing to a child with special needs has to be done in the right way. And there are a lot of elements to this, but first of all, we make sessions very short. Very often when we teach children to write, adults will have a child sit down for 20, 30 minutes and try to work through, how to write different letters. And the child just hates it because the child doesn't want to sit down for 20 to 30 minutes to do this activity. So very often when we do writing sessions, they're 2 minutes maximum. And we focus first and foremost with teaching children how to write words. And we follow a process. Maybe in a future episode, we should talk about writing specifically and how we go about teaching writing. But we follow different steps from tracing to copying to writing independently. So it's a step-by-step process, but we absolutely can teach children to write. So I think, Sandra, in terms of how to learn more about this, I definitely recommend, if I'm assuming maybe you've read the Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. This talks about the beginning part of our reading program. We talk about brachiation in the book Fit Baby, Smart Baby, Your Baby. It's also in Mobility to Walking, which are 2 mobility books. And Sandra, if you, in terms of writing, if you've already come for a course at Doman International or you've come for an appointment, we have an advanced course on writing. So if you've already kind of taken the first step with our program, that option is there for you. But I'm not sure if you have. Colleen, do you recognize Sandra's name by any chance?
I do, and
do.
Sandra, yeah, I believe you did take the course.
Okay, that's why the name seems familiar to me. So yeah, Sandra, we do have an advanced course called How to Teach Your Child to Write or Type, so I actually teach the course, and so if you've already taken the course, Sandra, you could sign up for that advanced course. If you wanted to, you could contact Colleen, or if you come for an appointment, all the advanced courses are included with the appointment. Hopefully that helps. All right, Colleen, we have a question here. I'll let you maybe start with this. The parent is this is Aratira, who asked before about global developmental delay in epilepsy. She's asking, what course would you recommend for a baby with epilepsy?
So the book that Spencer mentioned obviously is the best first step. Our course is actually included as part of our appointments now. So we did give the course as a freestanding option at one time, but we realized that the better way to serve families really was to work directly with you. But you get all of the information from that course because that is included in the appointment. So again, if we know where you are in the world, pardon my cat, we can get you set up with a good appointment for you. We do online appointments. Now, our ideal is to see kids in person. There's no substitute for that. We all know that that's true. But the online appointment can be a good option too if travel is really not a possibility. So so just know that if you don't live near Philadelphia, it's not necessarily a barrier.
By the way, in case everyone's wondering, Colleen's co-host cat is Bean, right? Colleen?
That is Bean, yes, yeah. That is Bean.
He's the most dog-like cat I've ever met. Colleen has a dog-like cat. I have a cat-like dog. That's okay. Thank you, Colleen. All right, we've got a comment here from Laura. Laura says, just wanted to let you know how amazing and illustrative these lives are. Thank you very, very much. I wish having more time, more hours during the day and implementing everything besides learning it. Thank you. Oh, well, thank you, Laura. I really appreciate that. And, I hope that, the things we talk about here are practical and helpful for everyone out there. I really appreciate your positive comments too, because it is nice to know that we're helping people here. So thank you very much. Keep tuning in, stay in touch, get our books, and at some point, if you can, come and visit us. We'd love to get to know you and your child. All right, I think we have time for one last question. And I see a question here from Marianne who says, do you recommend hyperbaric oxygen therapy for brain development? If so, do you know a location where this can be done in a chamber that does not require masks? Because my son did not tolerate the mask on his face. So, it's interesting, Marianne. In my experience with hyperbaric oxygen, and this might be different, from clinic to clinic or location to location. In my experience, the chambers in the US don't require a mask to be placed on the face. So the child can go in, and very often with a parent, and they just sit in the chamber together. Now, do we use hyperbaric oxygen? No, we don't. And it's not because we have anything against hyperbaric oxygen. In fact, we have had a lot of contact in the past with Paul Harsh, who is in New Orleans and is probably the world's leading expert in hyperbaric oxygen use, and has done some amazing work, for example, with veterans of wars and helping people. The reason why we don't use hyperbaric oxygen is because we have other oxygenation programs that we have found to be more effective, less expensive, and just more practical for parents. So because of that, we haven't used hyperbaric oxygen. In fact, we have 3 different oxygenation programs that we use with kids, and it looks like we're about to add a 4th. And not all of them involve putting a mask on the face, but some of them do. So we have a lot of options in terms of increased oxygenation for kids. And so for that and because hyperbaric oxygen tends to be very expensive, and usually requires also 40 sessions to do it the right way, that's one of the reasons why we don't really use it. But I have nothing against hyperbaric oxygen. I mean, in terms of things like treating wounds, it's amazing. And it has helped people with traumatic brain injury as well. Okay. Colleen, I'm all out of questions here. Anything else you'd like to say before we depart?
Just thanks everyone for, being with us on this. I'm really excited that we're going to be doing it every single week.
Yeah.
Spencer's got a fantastic schedule lined up of staff and parents. Sometimes he's traveling and seeing families at the time that this session is. So that was why we would have to skip before, but that's not going to be an issue anymore. And I'm just really excited about being able to reach more families in 2025.
Yeah, and to that point, on next week's session, we're going to be talking about ABA therapy, also called, ABA stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis. It's one of the most common therapies used with children with autism, but also with other neurodevelopmental issues. And so I'm going to have Jordan Ernest on, who is a member of the Doman International team, but also trained in ABA. And she's going to come on and talk about her experience in being educated in ABA, some of her real concerns and issues with that form of therapy. And I think it's going to be very interesting to pick her brain and get her ideas. So I recommend, if any of you are interested in ABA or have anyone else who is interested in it, I recommend tuning in for that. All right, Colleen, thanks so much for joining us. And Marianne, thanks so much for coming on too. We appreciate anyone who's brave enough to come on and ask questions. So, yeah, and by the way, if anyone watching this is interested in joining a future session and asking questions, just shoot us a message on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, and we'll get back to you and set that up. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a really good rest of your week.
Thank you. Bye.